welcome to the Beginner's Handbook. I'm Jordan.
I'm Jamie.
And in this episode, we're just going to talk about just a subject that kind of pops into our heads, and that's just keeping it casual, and that's like keeping games casual, that is. It's something that I think we both feel quite strongly about, but particularly myself, because just the amount of games I'm in and the amount of games I've seen that have went, like, you can't really have fun in some games because it's all serious all the time. And that's fine, that's a style people like, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen the same or multiple GMs like stress out over their games when actually they could have got away with just chilling, taking a breath, and they could have just done the game just as fun. There's a whole bunch of reasons that this has come to my head recently, so yeah, this is all about keeping it casual.
Yeah. And again, you could look at this in loads of different angles about it. And again, just something that's kind of popped into my head. I've seen DM/GM apologise because they've ended up like unwell, or they've just been a bit burnt out and they've not ran a game that was scheduled to be ran, despite the fact that they're like running a minimum of one game a week for a group and things. And at the other end of that apology coming through, you're going, they're genuinely gutted, and they feel that they've let a load of people down, rather than looking at it from the point of view of that they've been reliably there every week for the past, year or however long it's been since, they last had to cancel something for whatever reason. So, like, from that point of view as well, as a player and things, that you're going, well, obviously if you're running a game, then at that point you're putting in however much effort into a story and all the rest of it. But when it gets to a point where somebody's feeling like they've let you down and things, that you go, it's went way beyond casual at that point. And I think it can happen in different ways. It can happen through assumption. It can happen through repetition. It can happen through somebody setting themselves their own goals, their own targets, their own standards. But like we say quite a lot in quite a lot of different episodes, remember, it's a game and you're there to have fun.
Yeah. This is the thing, there's nothing wrong with being like gutted you're not doing a game. Maybe something you've been excited to run, that's cool. But I've definitely seen, not just in the cases you're talking about, like other times where I've woke up to messages from the GM from like 5:30 and that morning, and like big ones, and that's been sent to group chats because they're like I'm letting everybody down sort of thing. And I can promise you, nobody thought that, and probably some of us were secretly like, oh, thank God I can take a break tonight. And I say that, I mean me. But I'm sure there was more than just me, but I know for sure that I was one of those. But for me, it's just actually one thing I'm curious for people that are listening or watching, how do you actually like to run your games? Do you prefer the more casual games, or are you somebody that likes to really deeply jump in and just be like, you're all about immersion? Because that's something I find interesting, because I like immersive games, but I would never run one that's like you've got to come immersed. Like, I've heard stories of people, this happened to someone I know, this wasn't something online, where somebody was playing, I think it was a Game of Thrones game, because they were talking about it, and they were expected to read the book before they got there. And to me, I'm just like, I wouldn't even go to a game like that, even if I knew the rules. If that's what the expectation was, it's just not a style of game I'm interested in. I'd much rather, even if it was a game that was to be more intense or involved, I'm not expecting people to come like that. I'd rather 100% of the time be running a casual game. So curious about yourselves that are listening or watching, but
before we kind of go on, what would you say is a casual game?
There's different levels, but I would just say a game where people can come in, and for most of the time my games can be, I suppose you could class them as casual, but one where people aren't expected to come with they're expected to come with like all the stuff laid out, all their plans, their characters known to heart, something where you're almost expected to do your homework. And I say that because I've been involved in games that have been like that. For me, a casual game is one that people can come in and just sit down. They can sit and make characters if they want, but they could be given a character. But the whole point is just to get in, play the game, and wrap up and just have a great experience overall. Not be expected to come in with prior knowledge, not be expected to come in with, now if they come in with characters that they want to play because they know what's happening, that's cool. But I never expect people to make characters in games that I run. I'd rather just hand you a pre-gen if you prefer. We did that with the Nazi Biker game because they just so happened to have pre-gens. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Because for me, I've usually got newish or completely new people to role-playing games. I don't want to make them play a game that requires like full background knowledge of a system to play. Some systems are a bit like that. But yeah, that's what I would say a casual game is. Something you can just come in, drop out, just whatever. Not needing to commit to, even if it's a campaign, not needing to commit to playing every game of that campaign. That's something that's more casual. It's maybe more accessible.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, it was just as we were talking there that I was pretty confident that's what you were going to say, but at the same point, it was one of those, maybe you're down a slightly different path. Again, broadly speaking, I would agree. I would say for me, it's a game that doesn't have a lot of expectations. It doesn't have a lot of kind of, try to think of a way of describing it. I don't mean like rules or a dictatorship or anything like that from a DM. It's something that is relaxed is what I'm looking for. Something that's relaxed, doesn't have a lot of expectations, but it doesn't mean that you can't do a serious game. It doesn't mean that you can't, have a long campaign, whatever, but if somebody can't make it for that week, then you don't get like mob justice in the group chat getting fired out. Everybody turning up with electronic pitchforks and torches, that kind of thing. But also that if you are playing a serious game, so if it's a campaign and it's, you're using, a kind of stricter set of rules or whatever, it doesn't mean that if there is an actually kind of funny moment that happens in the game, that if somebody breaks character and comments on it or whatever, that they're going to get like put in the naughty step or whatever. That to me is what it is, rather than a game where it's only ever light-hearted, it's only ever comic, it's only ever that. Any genre you want, any mix it up, do whatever you want, as long as there isn't a how come you weren't there last Tuesday, what was going on there, and okay.
Do you know an example of the opposite was like games where if you didn't show up you wouldn't be getting the XP? I hate it. I've talked about asymmetric leveling up before and it just does my head in. Maybe because I've been a victim of it more so than some of the others. Not that I'm not even speaking about our games, like I've had other games that it was really bad that. But I mean for me, like I play games with adults, do you know what I mean? So people are busy sometimes, and they can't always make games. I'm never going to have somebody getting punished for that. And that's, for me, I just prefer the casual stuff because I think it's just that you can do more, it's more flexible, you can be more fun, you can try new things with them. I'm sure you've got examples as well, but there's plenty of games I've been in that, was it one of the groups I've got, not us, that the guy was like, okay, I'm going to run a 2-year campaign and would like you to play it. And it's like, I know what the guy's like. He wants you to read his lore sheets and pick all his gods with all the lore and know all the days of the week. And I'm going, I said just outright, I'm not interested in a game like that. You just go ahead, and if you're okay with it, I'll just dip in and out. But I'm not committing to it just because it's not a game I'm interested in. So yeah, I think that's really it. And it's not hard to keep games simple. Easy way to do it is starting with one-shots. Try with one-shots with B games and like the Grindhouse collection for Call of Cthulhu. I keep bringing them up because I'm running them at the moment. But they're great ways to just get an idea of what a casual game could be like. Sure, they're scary at times, but they're easy. I'm Nazi Biker game. In terms of talking about casual stuff, I'd said we'd just do it outside. We normally play a certain day in the week. I was like, we'll just do any other time. We're happy with that. We've changed the day around. It's not like a big commitment. We'll know we'll get to it very soon.
Yeah.
And we've got a day planned for it now. So, but we're happy with that. And because of the nature of the game, we're not expecting people to come in and know absolutely everything that's happening. When we come back to it, I'll be doing a recap and we'll be back into it as if it was ran the previous week. And that's really what's good about casual games. We can do that, whereas the formal ones I've seen, it's like strict regiment for who's coming, who's not. There's almost punishments. Like, well, we used to get punished for not knowing the lore for some guy's homebrew game. And I understand wanting people to be immersed. But it's hard work. It's really hard work.
On that one as well, like the homebrew game, not knowing the lore and all that sort of stuff, I assume none of the content has ever been published.
No.
So you're expected to know something that isn't freely available and isn't common knowledge.
But it's freely available because they gave us a lore document, so their dossier, if you want. I think that's the word they use. But it's just it's not something I'm interested in, because some of the other games that I've been in, the guys put in tons of work. But literally, it was a game I played it was this week, early this week. And it was mostly GM talking to us about environment, and that's fine. Like, I mean, the story's interesting, but there wasn't a lot for us to do. Like, we had a bit of roleplay bits, but outside of that, it was listening to basically the guy. It was almost like an audiobook of his own story, and in that case, I'm thinking we'll just write the audiobook, because I mean, it's an interesting story, but when you're prepping for a game and you're getting ready to play it, and then you're kind of just not playing it, it's not what we were expecting. So, and that for them isn't a casual game. That's like a real immersive game for them. And for me, I would say it is maybe an immersive one, but it's not one that we can interact with a lot. And I think just even having the casual game, it's almost like a mindset, having casual in your head, because it can change how you're running games. It changed how I prepped games. I stopped worrying about over prepping, because it's not like I'm saying I don't put effort in my games. I know my source material. Like if I was doing a published game, I know my homebrew stuff for my homebrew games I've got, so I don't need to worry. I'm comfortable and confident enough in my improvisation to pick up bits I might not know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff happening in that bikers game. There was a bunch of improvised moments. Probably sussed it, but it kept the story going, and it meant that I wasn't needing to skim through a book where I don't even think there's an answer to some of the stuff in there. So yeah, that's what I would say in short.
Yeah, I mean, just what you're talking there, ultimately, if a game's casual from the DMGM's point of view, if it's casual, then you're going to be relaxed. If you're relaxed, then it means that if you get thrown a curveball, you're in a better frame of mind to deal with that, rather than if you're trying to be super serious and you're trying to implement something and then something goes off the rails, and then it's either a panic and a faff about, and then not a lot really gets done and it just continues to veer off course, or you then overcorrect and try and hammer it back on the rails rather than just letting it deviate, take another route, and then eventually getting it back at some point.
Yeah.
So I think it puts you in a better frame of mind from that point of view. And again, if you're a player, if it's a casual game, then it means that if you want to try some new element that you've not done before, whether it's you want to try a voice, an accent, you want to try and RP more, you want to try and get your RP a bit more simple or whatever it is, then because it's casual, you've got that freedom, you've got that space to work with. Whereas if it's under the microscope and serious and whatever, then you're probably going to default to what you normally do. You're probably going to default to what you know, because that's going to make you comfortable. So because you're not comfortable in the environment, you're going to what your kind of default is, rather than the environment making you comfortable to let you expand what your default is.
I think that's a good point, because it's not like I say this in a lot of episodes, I think, but it's not like my games, nobody takes them seriously. Like the games that I run, it's almost like it's actually, to me, it's almost like you've got casual games and more involved games. I think games are not just, they don't have to sit on that. I think they can actually change and morph. Some games that you run in a big campaign might be more casual than others. To me, it's almost like a mindset of,
Mm-hmm.
that's like the bit to get is just keeping it, treating it more casually. It is a game after all and a hobby. You're not Critical Role doing a TV show every week. You know, you're usually a bunch of folk or a handful of folk playing a game and acting stupid around the table, which is like the best way to involve yourself in these games. And sometimes that's a bit lost because of just, it's not, I use Critical Role there, but there's plenty of actual play channels out there who are doing like TV shows. And by the way, they're good, but that's not what your games are going to be like, you know. And I think it's just that mindset shift, sorry, um, to having them just being, allowing it to be more casual. I think they're also way more accessible, because speaking about voices, that's actually a really bloody good one, because I know that if I was to run the games, even some of the way that our games are run by one of our GMs, that would be too serious for some of the guys. When I started out running for one of my long-term groups now, that would have been too serious for them, and I wouldn't even consider it that serious. Like, it's more serious, more involved, but it's not like some of the experiences I have had, which was even more so. If I was to run it like at either the games that I was doing, like either of those examples, either our guys or some of the guys that I know that are super serious, it would have put people off, and certainly some of the new players wouldn't have came to play because it's too much, and they would damn well wouldn't have done any voices. But because it's casual, it kind of lets people be silly as well. And I run it, even if it's a serious game. It was a big horror game I was running, and I just made them do something really stupid. I think I asked him for a southern accent. He mentioned like something, I can't remember what it was. Anyway, he did an accent as a joke, and I made it like a joke and gave him like the equivalent of inspiration in that game. And it kind of started a wee joke around the table. And then one of the guys who never played RPGs or doesn't admit to playing them and had played only a couple was starting to do a voice. I'm kind of going, huh, the guy's actually getting into it. And now he's like a self-proclaimed, I play these games. Like, he's happy to admit that now. Before it was like a guilty, kind of closeted hobby, you know, whereas now he's totally happy with it. And that mindset shift, I think, if you've got that as a GM and can be flexible with the style of games you run, then it does bleed into your players.
Yeah.
Because some games I ran, I did when that player died. That game was super serious throughout the whole thing, and I approach games casually, but that was a serious game, super involved. Everybody was really in it. Like, I swear to God, somebody was almost crying at that table, and I could see it. You know, like you could see them being a bit like, oh my, rubbing their eyes and kind of cleaning their glasses every so often, masquerading the fact that they're kind of doing something in their face. But other times the game's just bananas. That's fine, because it's the attitude. It's taking a game into something. Approaching a game like a game. You know, I'm trying to make a good experience and being flexible to what people's needs and feelings are at the time. That can totally change the game.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is as well, there's, like you're talking about, there's taking something seriously and there's trying to be professional, for, you know, wanting a better way of describing it, about something, but you can still be casual about it, you know. So again, going back to opening up and what we are describing as casual, being relaxed about what goes on, and as well as being relaxed, not having strict expectations about, you know, other players, other people, and the game itself. So you can still be professional, and, you know, when you say that you're going to turn up, when you say you're going to do a game, that you actually turn up and you're there to do it. But if people turn up and everybody that's there's, you know, in a more light-hearted mood, then, you know, you're fine with the game being a bit more light-hearted. You'll then not try to force everybody to do whatever,
That's
you know,
a good
but
one.
you know, still being there and still turning up and still giving it your best effort and your best shot. It doesn't mean that you need to sacrifice any of the things that make it casual, you know. But I think people can kind of, more so maybe if they're kind of newer to it, can blur
get
the
a bit
lines a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, like, to me, with the kind of keeping it casual theme, is like I approach a lot of my stuff pretty casually. I've spoke before. I can't even remember if it was this one or another episode now. About I've mentioned it in more than one, and I've mentioned it earlier, but stuff like having screens and screens of lore basically inflicted upon you as a player. I pretty much I let player discover everything. Generally, I try. There's certain things you might need to front load a wee bit, but I try and keep that as light as possible. But things like the rules of a game, or the story, or the expanded lore, so maybe stuff that players aren't immediately needing to know. I don't tend to just front load people with that. I know guys that will tell you that if you're doing a new system, they'll sit and explain the rules, how to do all the checks and stuff before the game. The problem with that is by the time you actually need to do it, you can't remember because you just had a dump of information given to you,
Yeah.
and then you need to re-explain it anyway. Whereas I prefer just to ask for a check, and then I'll be like, so how you do that is, it's like the stress dice, just worry about that later. So it's just even the approach to actually the mechanics and teaching people the mechanics. It's just being more casual
Well,
about that whole process too.
Yeah, that again, that's something that I kind of like. He specifically asked me, "You've got a brand new player, and it's such and such a system. How are you teaching them how to do it?" I probably would have said roughly what you would have said. You know, don't dump loads of information. Blah 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 blah. So I'm taking a more casual approach to teaching them or helping them through the game. But us talking about games and being casual, I've completely kind of forgot about the new player at that point. I've only been kind of thinking about it from, people that are kind of familiar at that point, and me personally, and how I think and how I like the kind of overall sort of environment to be in things. But again, even down to somebody's first experience of a game, think about it, do you want that person to feel like they're sitting in an exam? And this is their first experience and they're turning up and they're trying to figure out just how to get involved, how to play? Or do you want it to be relaxed? Do you want it to be casual so that they don't feel under pressure, so that chances are they'll enjoy themselves and that they'll come back next time?
Yeah, I mean, I've had players, just to give you an idea, like I've had players who have joined like a year and at that time, a year and a half, like ongoing, almost weekly campaign that I was doing, completely new to the game, and I said, "This isn't a good game for them to start on. Should we not do something different?" And everybody's like, "No." I went, "Okay then." But what I'd basically done is I made a pre-gen for them. No, sorry, somebody else. I made a pre-gen, but somebody else had one more kind of they knew, so it meant they could help the guy during it. So that took a bit of grief off of me. But yeah, it was the same thing. I said, look, it's going to be pretty hard. As somebody playing a spellcaster, I did say it's not the best class for the guy to start. But don't worry if you don't know what you're doing. There's plenty of people at the table who can, if you get stuck, this guy can show you what to do. We'll jump over. There's no big deal. Even Warhammer, I was doing things like the corruption rules and stuff, but I was waiting until you actually had them. Like when they became relevant is when I told you, and then you get to roll it, because that's when you start to remember stuff, because you're actually using it at that time. You're learning it, then practically using it, and then it just repetition, it'll stick. So even just that attitude of just approaching a lot of stuff in a game like that, I think can be like immensely helpful, because you don't. Even the homebrew game I've got, there's a lot of information the players don't know. Their characters might know it now, but unless it becomes relevant, there's no point in me literally reading like a couple A4 pages of information to them. There's just no reason until it's relevant. And I can tell them that at the time, and I can tell them the bits they need to know, and just give them. It's just breaking it down into easy chunks. Like, I don't want loads of info. I'd rather be told, "Oh, if I know about the puzzle, what the puzzle is, or what I need to know. What's the answer to this riddle that I might know through the lore?" I don't know, that's not a great example, but I could just tell people that they know that. At the time, they don't need to sit and write 3 pages of notes and then need to go back and refer to it. It's too much. I think it's not. It slows down the game, at least for me. And I think just being more casual in that approach, you can do your serious games, but make them accessible that way. And I think that learning rules is one of these ones that can be a slog for some games. I play some really cool. Warhammer is a great example. It's hard work, but I think we did all right. And by the end of it, we were good. There was a bit of maths, and it can be a bit just of a pain just getting used to your modifiers, but that's fine.
Well, again, another decent example of keeping things casual in that is I threw you a curveball.
I was about to bring this up.
Yeah, so again, if you've not seen whatever episodes prior that we've talked about,
who knows which one that was in? Actually, I can't remember.
It's came up quite
was
a
a
lot
long-
actually.
Right.
Almost as if I enjoy reminding you about
Yeah.
it. But the long and short was that there was a character portrait up for a character who had a grenade on his person, and I asked the question, can I use one of my abilities to pull out the pin? And at that point, Jordan didn't know offhand the rules for explosives. So at that point, he could have went, well, he could have just gave it a flat out no, but he didn't. And the follow up to that is when it rolled and it's a success. Then at that point, he could have went, right, okay, everybody take 5. I'm going to consult the book. And then he could have spent however long reading, figuring it out, making sure he knew what was going on with it, and then followed the rules as per the book. But what he done was rolled success. Right, okay.
I gave it a scan, I think, and I just went, I'm not getting. If I didn't get it at the scan, I'm like, right.
Yeah. So that point, have a quick check, see if I can. Taking too long, bin that, and then he used a composite set of rules from different systems that he's more familiar with, that he has up in his noggin, and used that as the rule. And that was the rule for the rest of that game from that point forward until it concluded, and then you check the rule at whatever point.
Yeah.
But the long and the short with that is that you could have been the stickler for the rules, and you could have went, no, I'm doing that exactly as is, but you went, no, this makes sense, let's do it that way, keeps the flow, keeps everything going, decent enough idea, puts a bit of creativity in the fight, causes a bit of chaos in the fight, because now in the middle of the room with everybody surrounding this guy, everybody needs to scatter and run, otherwise they're not making it and whatever.
Yeah.
So
that's totally because with that example, I mean, if we knew the rules, we would have used them. But a lot of the time, if I don't know one, I'm not going to have that be like a whole, neurotic moment of a game. It's what's the point? It's supposed to be fun. So I just agreed the rule that we thought would be reasonable, and we went with it, and we'll stick with it the rest of the night. And if I figure it out, I think I did read it after and went, oh, I get it. And then by the next game, I forgot what it was. That's why I can't be bothered. This bloody blast rule, man. But that's just the way it is. It's just that whole approach to games and just being able to be flexible in that way, I think just can help just make them a lot better. I would just, that maybe it's just my personal opinion or style that it complements. But
and again, being casual, it's not just about being flexible, it's about, I suppose it's about understanding as much as anything, that if somebody can't make a game, that you go, right, okay, fair enough, you don't get too uptight about it. The same as if you need to cancel a game, everybody else that you're playing with should be, again, understanding, and that you take it from that point.
We even had a game. It was due. Well, the guys thought it was due on Monday, and I hadn't had any plans to do a game. And I said to him, I don't actually remember saying that, but it was just cross wires. I probably at some point said maybe in a couple of weeks, and that, So but then look, we went, that's fine, cool, do another time. But I know for some groups, but one of the groups that I play with, that would be like a melt. They'd be like, when are we ever going to play a game?
There'd be somebody out the back door making a wicker man.
It's just so even in that regard, even organising games, just chill. They are games, and I think you can get into that high strung thing about games, it's super serious and all that. But the problem sometimes it can just get to a point where it becomes high strung because it's so just there's tension around it. Whereas I don't feel personally a lot of our games have that. Our group's fine. Our Friday night guys, that's not a problem. They're kind of gutted I'm not running a game. I'm supposed to be playing with them this week, but I'm busy, so I can't do it. But we've not played the main campaign in a while, but people are okay with it. because we're adults, and we approach it casually. They take it super serious, but you know, the whole approach to it's very casual and it's quite welcoming. So it's nice. So I think that's everything I would say about keeping the games casual. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's really it from us. Do you want to just give the guys some socials and we'll tie it off there?
Yeah, so if you agree with us, disagree with us, think we're bonkers, think we should give it up, whatever.
They're not real GMs.
Then there's, if you're watching or listening on YouTube, there's comments underneath there. You can like and subscribe and all that sort of stuff as well. Turn on notifications. You can do the same over at Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you're listening. Facebook, you can leave us what you think over there. There's Instagram, there's X, and there's Discord as well. It's kicking about. So
that was a mouthful of social media. I was well done for remembering all that. I get to it and I'm just what have we got?
Yeah, you normally leave it to me though, so it's just repetition.
That's true. That's true.
Try and jazz it up every episode. Say something different. Swap the order about.
He threw it over to me one time, and I think I managed to get most of them, which was shocking. Through stumbling, of course. But
I was just tapping that out in Morse code in the table for you.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyway, that's it from us. So thanks again for listening and or watching, and it's going to be a bye from me.
Bye from me as well.